Welcome back. Some good news for South African gun owners with expired licenses. The Constitutional Court has found in favor of those who failed to renew firearm licenses before their expiration.
Well, the ruling means that gun owners who had to hand in firearms can apply to license the guns. The court found that the weapons, whether licensed or not, remain the property of the gun owner. So for more on this, we're joined now by Paul Oxley from the South African Gun Owners Association. Paul, thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's just speak a little bit about the significance of this particular ruling.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
Just, Paul, just about the significance of this particular ruling. What does it mean to all those who own guns and all those who had the concerns of potentially having to give their guns back?
Correct. It's actually quite a wide-ranging ruling. Although it was taken, the case was particularly in the instance of Fidelity Security Services, who had 700 or more firearms which had fallen into this category. The judgment, the ruling, the order has effect on everybody. The justices, and one must remember, this was actually a unanimous judgment, which is very rare. So there was no dissenting judgment. There was no. Everybody in the Constitutional Court signed on to this. They basically just recognize exactly what the law says. The law allows for the law allows for you to the firearms being your property. The law allows you to apply for a new license on it, even if your current license has expired. And this is something the police have been disputing for years. So this is a major slap in the face for the police.
Yeah, but then it says something about the education of the law where the police are concerned. Paul, I mean, you're saying that the property or the gun in itself is the property of the owner,
yes,
whether or not that license has expired, but they have to then renew that license. What happens if the said individual or the said owner chooses not to renew that license? When does that license or when does that gun get confiscated? Does it get confiscated?
Well, yes, it does. It does get confiscated, but it still remains the property of the owner. Just as if your car is declared to be unroadworthy, and the authorities confiscate your car, they take it away from you, they put it in the pound. It doesn't mean that you lose your rights of ownership over that car. It's still your car. You just have to fix the problem with the licensing or whatever it is.
Paul, let's talk about gun ownership in South Africa. I mean, and I put this in the context, in the general context of gun ownership around the world, specifically the United States. Is gun ownership in this country a thing? And when I say a thing, it's, you know, in the States, there's concerns that you can walk into a grocery store and walk out with an assault rifle. In this country, how difficult is it?
Okay, so that's a bit of a misnomer. In the States, it's not quite that easy at all. You have to go through background checks. It might take, the instant background check might take a couple of hours, but you still have to go through a background check. And I know exactly why you're asking this question in the light of the school shootings in the States last week. And the facts of the matter are that for some or other reason, so this is the problem with gun control laws in general. They don't really work. Evil people do what evil people do. If a guy wants to get hold of something, he gets hold of it. I mean, we have in South Africa the perfect illustration of that. I mean, people buy firearms from the police all the time. It's a major source of supply to the illegal market is the South African police themselves. So criminals do criminal things. It's what they do. Evil people find a way. Their whole psyche revolves around doing whatever they want to do. So gun control laws are pretty pointless in general because they don't really regulate much. In South Africa, of course, it's much more difficult. It can take to own a firearm in South Africa can take months, if not years. There has to be training that takes place beforehand. You apply to the police for competence once you have your proficiency training in hand. The police then look at your criminal profile. They interview your neighbors. They interview your family members. So it's a far more thorough process. And yet we have a murder rate, a firearm violence murder rate, probably greater than the United States, indicating exactly that firearm control doesn't work. Evil people do what evil people do.
Paul, then what does that say about, people's ability in this country to access guns illegally, as well as the black market? I want to labor on the point that you were making around the police having to sell off guns and how, I remember it was was it in Norwood, in the police station, where they broke into the police station and they stole all the firearm. Because that means that that firearm or those weapons are actually circulating within the black market themselves. One wonders how accessible is it? How easy is it for Faith, right, as I am with my eyelashes, to go and find somebody who can give me a gun illegally in this country?
Well, Faith, that's exactly the point. And the Norwood police store wasn't broken into. It was the officers in charge of the Norwood 13 store that actually supplied the firearms to the criminals. And I think the number's up to 170, I think it is, or 173. And the firearm, they just sold the firearm. They left the evidence bags that the firearms were in, those plastic transparent bags with the blue writing on. They left the bags on the floor of the store. They were so arrogant. The 13 store clerk and the station commissioner or the station commander and the head of visible policing and the head of detectives, who have all been charged. Of course, the 13 store clerk immediately committed suicide. Rather than face the music. But that was only one instance. We had before Colonel Prinsloo, who was in charge of firearms in Gauteng, who sold 2,500 firearms to the Cape Flats gangs. More than 1,500 of those are positively linked to murders on the Cape Flats. This is an ongoing problem. The police just can't seem to get over this. They're the institution in the country that is least trusted by the population. They're put in this position of ultimate authority, and they really do a bad job of it.
Paul, for someone from the Gun Owners Association to have such little faith in the laws, gun laws in this country, speaks volumes about the issues that this country is facing. So what then would you say can be the solution? Is it a matter of tightening the laws, or making them a little more stricter, or is it a matter of implementation? Because with a lot of laws in this country, Paul, implementation is just non-existent.
Exactly that. Well, so we saw about a year ago, the Civilian Secretary of Police was forced by Promotion of Access to Information Act request to release a report that they'd been sitting on for 6 years, I think it was, the Wits School of Governance report. So the Civilian Secretary of Police approached the Wits School of Governance and contracted them to do exactly this research, to research the law and what its effect was and why the levels of crime weren't being affected by the laws. And the Wits School of Governance came back to them and said to them, but okay, you're not going to like, and they literally said this in the conclusion, you're not going to like what we're going to come back and tell you, but we found that it's the law is actually not the problem. There's plenty of laws. You don't need to change the act. You don't need to change the existing laws. What you have to do is you actually have to start policing. And that's, of course, what the police don't want to hear, because that means they have work to do. It's easy to write laws, but it's incredibly difficult to implement them when you have a police force that has been described by a senior police officer of my personal knowledge as the best paid, worst police force in the world. It's a problem of policing. The firearms control should not sit with the South African Police Service. They are the least trusted, most incompetent, most corrupt organization in the country. The firearms licensing is far too important for that. There should be an independent agency that runs that controls firearms in South Africa. I don't care who it is. It could be Home Affairs. It could be an independent agency lodged within the Ministry of Justice. It could be anybody, but not the police. The police have got too many problems on their own to be worrying about this too.
Sure. Paul, we'll have to leave it there for this morning, but thank you very much for your insights. I think that you definitely do not mince your words when it comes to what your views are when it comes to gun ownership in South Africa.